Good evening, boys and girls. Time for another sprint zone, and it's a good turnout today. We have lots of special guests, and it's going to be a good one as the thumbs up from Byron indicates. So let's get the show on the road. So we're already like 100 yards into the sprint zone because it took me a while to get the camera turned on, but life is good. Big turnout today, with Matthew Michaels making a return to the fold. His legend will once again make a mark on the group. Newcomer Andy Lockwood's here, Ian, and a few other fresh faces we haven't seen in a while, including Danny Evans. Notably absent would be Isla and Greg, Joel, and some of the others, as they're off in Hawaii partying, and I do not recall getting my invite, but I digress. So, we're getting the party started. Matthew takes to the front, and I am quick to be on his wheel. Not throwing out tons of wattage, but it's a pretty stiff effort just to stay there. He hasn't been around for a while, and nobody knows what he's got. Ian hanging on my wheel, and it looks like he's beginning to struggle a little bit, as even my wattage is in the low 200s. I see a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a separation there, as we get the game afoot. Things are looking pretty sweet here, and it's been a long time since we've strung things out this early in the ride and in the season. And here you can definitely see, yeah, Ian is definitely struggling. I'm not certain why he hasn't pulled over to let somebody else take over. Maybe it's oxygen deprivation. Looks over his shoulder, and there's a little wave for people to come through, I think. In my opinion, that's a mistake. He should have been the one to move out. It's not in the best interest of the group to have to change their lines, but hey, maybe I'm just being a little too pedantic there. So Andy takes up the chase after last week making a really good showing there. He knows that he's trying to determine his place in the universe, and he believes it is up with the GC men. Steve Hyland on his wheel, surprisingly, and it's been a long time since we've seen him. So it's interesting that Matthew and I have a gap, but looking at the wattages that we're throwing out, I'm not too surprised. And looking back, people are strung out, and it almost looks like there's a little bit of desperation. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I want to be hanging on Matthew's wheel. I mean, he's a really good draft and everything, but this is early in the season. But as you can see, the boys, the hounds, are on the move here. And it looks like Danny Evans making a strong flex, bringing us back with everybody else in tow. And it should be noted that Byron is back there. And during the ride, I was pretty certain that Byron had a hand in bringing us back, because I didn't have any thoughts that there was anybody in the pack that was going to be able to pull Matthew and myself back. But apparently, I was a little too full of hubris there, and everybody's strong. So it's strung out, nice straight line. As you can see, Matthew's still at the front, and I told him I was going to mention this. Got that puffy jacket. I mean, that's basically a parachute behind his helmet. But hey, it made for a good draft. So I go around, Danny in tow, Steve Hyland in the bright red looking good. Andy Lockwood back there. Looks like Marcelo, also a good showing. They're having a good time, and I can see, oh, Tony, yep, Riccio back there also. It is a strong field full of GC contenders. So I'm at the front, keeping a good tempo. Not as hard as I could go, but I know that there's a lot of strongmen here, and basically I'm feeling it. So Byron comes over, he says, hey buddy, I'll give you a hand. So Byron's still on the gravel bike as he was last week, and he's dangerous. I'm happy to be sliding back to the back a little ways. There we see Tony, Matthew, Michaels in the fray, Andy Lockwood there. Looks like Marcelo, and then Eric Larmer, who hasn't been around in a long time, sitting comfortably in the rear. So at this point, I'm drifting back perhaps a little further than I really want to be, because if somebody makes a move up here, I'm not certain that the accelerations of the guys in front of me will be enough to pull me back to where I want to be. So I'm pretty nervous here. So I'm sitting on Andy's wheel, looking at the shadows. I can see Andy's not quite that comfortable, and there's a little more of a gap than I would like. I mean, Matthew Michaels is a safe wheel and a big draft. That's where you want to be. So knowing that this little riser's coming up, I go to make certain that I get myself in a much better position. And we're looking at the wattage here, throwing down over 400 watts at a point just to try to stay in contention. So a lot of GC men up here. And Byron just toying with the field on that gravel bike. I'm staying in contention. Danny Evans looks like he's starting to fall off a little bit, but he's a good wheel, and I kind of settle in right here. I should mention that my heart rate monitor, that wrist mounted on the Garmin Phoenix, it's just not right. So it's probably like 20 beats low, but for a relative thing, it's okay. So looking behind me, Andy looking strong. He's taken a lot more wind than he needs to, but as a new rider to the group, I can understand not having confidence sitting on the wheel and, maybe more importantly, knowing which wheels are safe. So Marcelo looking pretty strong there. I must admit his cadence looks much better than it had over last year where he was doing maybe 120, so he's definitely worked on that, as I mentioned before. Eric sitting back there looking super comfortable, not in the drops, just sitting up. Andy drifting back to the back, probably very comfortable back there. And we can see that the speeds are still high. Looking at it, it's like 26 miles an hour. And this is early in the season. So, everybody's still in contention. I was hoping to see some people falling off back here because I really wasn't certain when I was riding, like who was where and what was happening. But I can see that everybody was here. Strong, strong field. And we're loving it. My heart rate pretty high, but I'm in contention. Danny looking strong. Danny had a huge effort to pull us back, and that kind of effort takes its toll because during this effort there was no room to recover. There was that surge by Steve, maybe. Nope, that must have been Byron up at the front, and it's a hard one. Looks like, is it Tony taking over there? Yeah, Tony Riccio once again going to the front. Strong man, wearing his new colors this year. Matthew Michaels right on his wheel, as he should be. And then Byron. I mean, these three in themselves, strong GC contenders, and each one of them has won one of these. So Tony pulls off in a really strong effort there. Matthew takes over. He's probably happy to be at the front. He hasn't been out in a while, so we don't know what he has. Byron tucking in really nicely, and he looks so smooth, and there's no effort here for him to stay on the wheel. Speed still high. It's a slight bit of a grade, and to my surprise, Steve Highland is here. And it should be noted that the rev limiter that he was underneath last year has been raised a little bit, so he is good to go to throw down in some of these contests. So it looks like way, way, way back there somebody is falling off. I can't see what it is, but finally somewhat of a selection is starting to be made. Matthew Michaels in an unfamiliar position, like falling back a little bit, and Steve Highland going on the attack here. Strong move, and you can see my wattage up over 430 watts just to try to stay in contention. Byron digs deep to cover this one. In that strong flex by Steve, he's a new man this year. I believe I mentioned him last year as someone to fear, not to let go up the road, and clearly what he has shown today is that was correct. And yes, that separation, that little surge by Steve caused a huge disruption in the group. And Eric, who was just sitting in the back, super strong flex by him, coming up solo to join the GC men in the final selection. So I'm really hurting at this point. I'm just barely hanging on. I'm feeling better than last week, but those squats and that leg work had my legs screaming at this point. So Steve goes, Byron's giving up the ghost. I don't have what it takes. And surprisingly, Eric, who hadn't shown himself all day, takes a second place. Well done. Looking at Byron here, he worked. I mean, I know he likes to work, but he definitely earned that one. That was a hard one. In fact, this is probably one of the better sprint zones that I've actually seen. I think that we're in for a good season, and when we get some occasional guest stars, maybe Ben Miller or like Brad Wright or somebody coming out too, this will make this a spectacular season. Well done, everybody. Well done. It doesn't get any better than this. I really enjoyed this. It was hard. I mean, the film might make it look like it was easy, but there was some effort here, and I didn't actually cover all the selection when Eric closed in, but that was huge. Yeah. Anyway, guys, enjoyed that one. Until next time, and as always, a good time was had by all.